They say when tragedy strikes, you discover who truly loves you and who is just waiting for an opportunity. A 9-year-old girl, paralyzed from the waist down, sits in her wheelchair outside a locked gate. Rain pounds against her thin jacket. Her stepmother just pushed her out into the storm and slammed the door behind her. The child can't walk. She can't run. She can barely move without help. And the woman who promised to love her father until death did them part has decided that death releases all promises, especially the ones made to a disabled child. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Why would a woman who stood at a funeral crying just days before turn around and abandon a helpless child in the middle of a thunderstorm? What secret was buried in the heart of a dying man, a secret so powerful it could change everything? And who was the stranger who pulled up to that gate on that rainy night, the man who would risk everything to save a child he barely knew? These are the questions that haunted a small town in North Carolina for months. This is a story about a father's love that reached beyond the grave, about a woman's greed that knew no bounds, and about a child who refused to give up even when the world gave up on her. Her name was Violet Williams, and she came into this world fighting. Born with a spinal cord injury that doctors said would leave her paralyzed from the waist down for life, Violet defied every limitation placed on her from day one. Her father, Robert Williams, was a carpenter by trade and a dreamer by nature. He lived in Durham, North Carolina, in a modest 2-story house he built with his own hands. When the doctors told him his daughter would never walk, Robert didn't cry. He didn't fall apart. Instead, he went home and started building ramps. He redesigned doorways. He lowered countertops. He turned his entire home into a place where his daughter could move freely, where she would never feel trapped or limited by her condition. Every night before bed, he would wheel Violet out to the porch and they would look up at the stars together. He'd tell her stories about constellations, about ancient heroes and forgotten kings, and he'd always end with the same promise. As long as I'm breathing, baby girl, you'll never have to face this world alone. Robert was a widower. Violet's mother, Angela, had died during childbirth, leaving Robert to raise his daughter by himself. For 7 years, it was just the two of them against the world. He taught her how to paint, how to read music, how to laugh even when life felt heavy. He never let her see his tears, never let her know how many nights he stayed awake worrying about what would happen to her if something happened to him. He saved every dollar he could, putting money aside for her future, for her education, for whatever she might need when he was gone. But Robert wasn't just careful with money. He was careful with people too. He didn't date much. He didn't bring strangers into their home. Until he met Claudia Monroe. Claudia was everything Robert thought he needed. She was charming, well-spoken, and she seemed genuinely interested in Violet. She would bring the little girl gifts, compliment her drawings, push her wheelchair through the park on Sunday afternoons. Robert fell hard and fast. Within 6 months they were married. Within a year, everything started to change. Claudia's smiles became rarer. Her patience grew thin. She started making comments about how much Violet's medical supplies cost, how much space her wheelchair took up, how exhausting it was to care for a child who couldn't do anything for herself. Robert tried to smooth things over, tried to remind Claudia of the vows they'd taken, but the warmth between them had already started to freeze. Still, he believed love could fix anything. He believed if he just worked harder, earned more, gave Claudia the life she wanted, everything would be okay. He had no idea that Claudia had never loved him at all. She loved what he had. And she'd been planning to take it from the very beginning. Robert's brother, Kenneth, had warned him about Claudia from the start. Kenneth lived 2 hours away in Raleigh, working as an accountant, and he only saw his brother a few times a year. But even from a distance he could see the cracks forming. He tried to tell Robert that something felt off about Claudia, that her affection seemed calculated, rehearsed. But Robert was too deep in, too desperate to believe that he'd finally found someone who could help him carry the weight of raising Violet alone. Kenneth let it go, hoping he was wrong. He wasn't. And by the time the truth came out, it would be too late to save Robert. But maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be too late to save Violet. It happened on a Wednesday night in late October. Robert had been feeling tired for weeks, complaining about chest pains and shortness of breath. Claudia insisted he was just overworked, that he needed to rest more, take it easy. She discouraged him from going to the doctor, said they couldn't afford the bills right now. So Robert pushed through, kept working, kept ignoring the warning signs his body was screaming at him. That Wednesday he came home from a long day at a construction site, kissed Violet on the forehead, and went upstairs to lie down. 2 hours later, Violet heard Claudia scream. Robert Williams was dead at 42 years old. The official cause of death was a massive heart attack. No autopsy. No investigation. Just a death certificate signed by a doctor who had never treated Robert before, a doctor who happened to be Claudia's cousin. The funeral was small. Kenneth came down from Raleigh, grief carved into every line of his face. He held Violet's hand during the service, whispered promises that he would take care of her, that she wouldn't be alone. But Claudia had other plans. She told Kenneth that Robert had left explicit instructions in his will. He wanted Violet to stay in Durham, in the home he'd built for her, under Claudia's care. Kenneth didn't believe it, but when he asked to see the will, Claudia said it was with the lawyer and would be read in a few weeks. Kenneth had to go back to work, back to Raleigh, and he left Violet in Claudia's hands, believing that at least for now she was safe. 3 days after the funeral, everything changed. Claudia stopped pretending. She stopped smiling at Violet, stopped helping her with basic tasks, stopped cooking meals. She would leave the house for hours without telling Violet where she was going. She'd come back with her brother, Travis, a man Robert had never trusted, a man with a criminal record and a reputation for violence. Travis started staying at the house, sleeping on the couch, going through Robert's belongings like he owned the place. Violet could hear them late at night, whispering in the kitchen, arguing about something they called the drive. She didn't understand what they meant, but she could hear the anger in their voices, the frustration. They were looking for something Robert had hidden, something valuable, and they couldn't find it. One night, Violet wheeled herself to the top of the stairs and listened. Claudia was on the phone, her voice sharp and cold. Robert set up a trust for her, and without proof of the amendment, we can't touch it. Violet's heart raced. She didn't know what a trust was, didn't understand legal terms or inheritance laws, but she understood enough to know she was in danger. She understood that Claudia and Travis weren't just looking for money. They were looking for a way to erase her from her father's will entirely. And if they couldn't find it, they'd find another way to get rid of her. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. Rain hammered against the windows, thunder rolled across the sky, and the power flickered in and out. Claudia walked into Violet's room without knocking, her face twisted with rage. Travis stood behind her, arms crossed, blocking the doorway. Claudia grabbed the handles of Violet's wheelchair and started pushing her toward the door. Violet screamed, begged, asked what she'd done wrong. Claudia didn't answer. She just kept pushing, her jaw clenched, her movements rough and deliberate. Travis opened the front door and the rain blew in, soaking the floor. Claudia shoved Violet's wheelchair out onto the porch, then down the ramp Robert had built with his own hands. The wheels got stuck in the mud near the gate, and Violet sat there, rain pouring over her, unable to move, unable to run, unable to do anything but cry and call out for a father who would never answer again. Claudia stood at the door, silhouetted by the light from inside the house. Her voice was flat, emotionless, as cold as the rain. "You're a burden, Violet. Your father's gone and I'm done pretending to care. If you want to survive, figure it out yourself." Then she slammed the door. The lock clicked. And Violet was alone in the storm. If this story is making your heart race, drop a comment and let us know you're still watching. We need to know we're not alone in feeling this pain. Violet sat in that wheelchair for 20 minutes, rain soaking through her clothes, her teeth chattering, her whole body shaking from cold and fear. She tried to push the wheels forward, but they were buried in mud. She tried to call for help, but her voice was swallowed by the storm. She thought about her father, about all the nights he'd promised she'd never be alone, and she wondered if he could see her now, if he knew how badly she needed him. She prayed. Not the kind of prayer you say in church, not the memorized words from Sunday school, but the raw, desperate kind of prayer that comes from the deepest part of your soul. "Please God, don't let me die out here. Please send someone. Anyone." And then, through the rain and the darkness, headlights appeared. A car slowed down near the gate. A man who stepped out of that car. His name was Isaac Bradley, and he was Robert's oldest friend. Isaac and Robert had grown up together in Durham, played basketball in the same park, gone to the same high school. They drifted apart over the years the way old friends do, but they still talked on the phone every few months, still checked in on each other. Isaac had been at Robert's funeral, but he hadn't stayed long. He'd felt uncomfortable around Claudia, sensed something off about the way she held herself, the way she talked about Robert like he was already forgotten. Tonight, Isaac had been driving home from a late shift at the hospital where he worked as a nurse, and something had told him to take the long way, to drive past Robert's house, just to see if everything was okay. When he saw Violet in the rain, he slammed on the brakes. Isaac ran to the gate, his shoes sinking into the mud, and he knelt down in front of Violet's wheelchair. He didn't ask her what happened. He didn't waste time with questions. He just lifted her out of the chair, carried her to his car, and wrapped her in a blanket he kept in the back seat. He tried the front door of the house, but it was locked. He banged on it, shouted Claudia's name, but no one answered. So he made a decision that would change everything. He took Violet home with him. Isaac's apartment was small, just a one-bedroom place on the east side of Durham, but it was warm and dry and safe. He gave Violet his bed, made her soup, found dry clothes that were way too big but better than nothing. He sat beside her while she cried, didn't try to stop her tears or tell her everything would be okay, because he knew it wouldn't be, not yet. He just stayed. And when Violet finally fell asleep, exhausted and broken, Isaac sat in his living room and called Kenneth. Kenneth answered on the second ring, and when Isaac told him what had happened, there was a long, terrible silence on the other end of the line. Then Kenneth's voice came through, shaking with rage. "I'm coming to get her. Tonight." But Isaac stopped him. He told Kenneth they needed to be smart about this, that if they just took Violet without proof of what Claudia had done, Claudia could claim kidnapping, could use the law to get Violet back and make their lives even worse. They needed evidence. They needed a plan. Kenneth didn't like it, but he knew Isaac was right. So they agreed to wait, to gather information, to figure out what Claudia and Travis were really after. Isaac promised Kenneth that Violet would be safe with him, that he wouldn't let anything happen to her. And Kenneth, who had no other choice, had to trust a man he barely knew. Violet stayed with Isaac for 3 days. During that time, Isaac learned more about her than Claudia had bothered to learn in over a year. He learned that Violet loved to draw, that she had a talent for capturing faces and expressions in pencil. He learned that she was brilliant at math, that she could solve problems in her head faster than most adults could with a calculator. He learned that she had nightmares every night, that she woke up crying for her father, that she blamed herself for being a burden. Isaac held her when she cried and told her the truth her father would have told her. "You're not a burden, Violet. You're a gift. And anyone who can't see that is blind." On the 4th day, Isaac got a call from Kenneth. Kenneth had been digging, asking questions, pulling strings with friends who worked in legal offices around the state. And he'd found something. Robert's lawyer, a man named Gerald Hutchinson, had been trying to reach Claudia for weeks. Apparently, Robert had updated his will just 2 months before he died, and the new version included specific instructions about Violet's care, her education, and a substantial trust fund set up in her name. But there was a problem. The updated will was stored on a flash drive, and Robert had given a copy to Gerald with explicit instructions. "If anything happens to me, make sure Violet gets this. Don't let anyone else see it first." Gerald had kept the drive in his safe, but when he went to open the safe after Robert's death, the drive was gone. Someone had broken into his office and stolen it. Kenneth and Isaac put the pieces together. Claudia and Travis weren't just greedy. They were criminals. They'd stolen the flash drive, probably hoping to destroy it so the old will would stand, the will that left everything to Claudia as Robert's spouse. But here's the thing about desperate people. They make mistakes. And Claudia's biggest mistake was underestimating a 9-year-old girl who remembered everything her father ever told her. Late one night, while Isaac was at work, Violet woke up from a dream. In the dream, her father was sitting beside her bed, smiling the way he used to when she'd figured out a hard puzzle or finished a painting she was proud of. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her with those warm, kind eyes, and then he whispered, "If you ever need me, baby girl, look under the violin." Violet woke up gasping, her heart pounding, because she knew exactly what her father meant. Robert had kept an old violin, a beat-up instrument he'd inherited from his own father. He never played it, never even took it out of its case, but he kept it on a shelf like it was the most precious thing in the world. Violet had asked him once why he kept it if he never used it. Robert had just smiled and said, "Some things are worth keeping even if no one else understands why." When Isaac came home from his shift, Violet was waiting for him, her face pale but determined. She told him about the dream, about the violin, about the feeling in her gut that her father had left her a message. Isaac didn't dismiss her. He'd seen too many strange things in his life to ignore intuition, especially the intuition of a child who just lost everything. So he called Kenneth and the three of them made a plan. They would go back to Robert's house, find a way inside, and look for that violin. It was risky. If Claudia caught them, she could call the police, claim they were trespassing, make everything worse. But they didn't have a choice. If an extra flash drive was hidden in the violin case, it was the only proof they had that Robert wanted Violet taken care of, that Claudia had no legal right to anything. They went back on a Sunday afternoon, when they knew Claudia would be at her mother's house across town. Kenneth had a key to the back door, one Robert had given him years ago in case of emergencies. They slipped inside quietly, their hearts racing, moving through the house like ghosts. Everything looked different. Claudia had already started redecorating, replacing Robert's simple, practical furniture with expensive pieces that didn't match the house's character. Pictures of Robert and Violet had been taken down, replaced with generic art that meant nothing to anyone. It was like Claudia was erasing them, wiping away every trace of the life Robert had built. They found violin untouched. Claudia and Travis hadn't bothered cleaning the room it was kept, probably because they were still searching for the flash drive. The violin case sat on the shelf exactly where it had always been, covered in a thin layer of dust. Isaac lifted it down carefully, laid it on Robert's desk, and opened it. The violin was still inside, strings loose, wood faded. But underneath the instrument, tucked into a hidden compartment in the case's lining, was a small USB drive wrapped in a note. Kenneth unfolded the note with shaking hands, and Violet listened as he read it out loud. "If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I pray it's just paranoia, but I don't trust Claudia anymore. She's been asking too many questions about my finances, about Violet's medical costs, about what would happen if I died. Her brother Travis has been pressuring me to invest in his schemes, and when I refused, he threatened me. I'm scared, but I don't know who to turn to. So I'm hiding this drive where only the people who truly love Violet would think to look. On it is my updated will, video recordings of conversations with Claudia and Travis, and evidence of financial fraud. If I'm gone, please protect my daughter. Don't let them take her future. Don't let them win." The note was signed with Robert's name and dated 2 weeks before he died. Violet started crying, and not from sadness this time. She was crying because her father had known. He'd known he was in danger, known Claudia was a threat, and he'd done everything in his power to protect his daughter even after death. Isaac copied the contents of the flash drive onto his laptop right there in the office, and what they found was damning. There were bank statements showing that Claudia had been stealing from Robert's accounts for months, funneling money into offshore accounts under Travis's name. And there was the updated will, clear as day, stating that everything Robert owned was to be held in trust for Violet until she turned 18, with Kenneth named as her legal guardian. They had everything they needed. But before they could leave, they heard the front door open. Claudia was home early. How would you feel if you discovered your father had tried to protect you from beyond the grave? Drop a comment and let us know your thoughts. Claudia walked into the house calling Travis's name, her voice echoing through the empty rooms. Kenneth grabbed Violet and moved toward the back door, but Isaac stayed behind, standing in the office doorway with his phone in his hand. Claudia froze when she saw him. Her face went pale, then red with rage. She demanded to know what he was doing in her house, threatened to call the police, said she'd have him arrested for breaking and entering. Isaac didn't move. He just held up his phone and said 4 words that changed everything. "I recorded everything." It was a bluff. Sort of. Isaac had recorded the part where they found the flash drive and read Robert's note, but he didn't have video evidence of Claudia's crimes. Not yet. But Claudia didn't know that. She lunged at him, trying to grab the phone, and in that moment of chaos, Kenneth and Violet slipped out the back door. Isaac followed seconds later, slamming the door behind him and sprinting to his car. They drove straight to the Durham Police Department, where Kenneth had already arranged a meeting with a detective he knew from college. They handed over the flash drive, the copied files, the note, everything. The detective listened to their story, watched the videos, reviewed the bank statements, and within 2 hours, a warrant was issued for Claudia Monroe's arrest. Travis was picked up that same night at a bar downtown, drunk and bragging to his friends about how he was about to come into a fortune. When the officers told him he was being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft, and child endangerment, he tried to run. He didn't get far. Claudia was arrested at the house. She tried to play innocent, tried to claim she didn't know what Travis had been planning, that she'd only wanted what was best for Violet. But the evidence was overwhelming. The trial took 6 months. Kenneth became Violet's temporary guardian, and she moved to Raleigh to live with him and his wife. It was hard at first. Violet had nightmares. She struggled to trust anyone. She flinched when people raised their voices or moved too quickly. But Kenneth and his wife were patient. They got her into therapy, found her a school that could accommodate her needs, reminded her every single day that she was loved and wanted and safe. Isaac visited every weekend, bringing art supplies and books and stories about her father. Slowly, painfully, Violet started to heal. When the trial finally reached its conclusion, Violet was asked if she wanted to testify. She was only 9 years old, and the judge said she didn't have to, that her recorded statements would be enough. But Violet insisted. She wanted to face Claudia. She wanted to tell the truth in her own words. So on a cold morning in April, Violet wheeled herself up to the witness stand, looked Claudia directly in the eyes and spoke. My father taught me that love protects. He taught me that family means never giving up on each other. You pretended to be family, but you never loved me. You never even tried. And I forgive you not because you deserve it, but because my father would want me to. He would want me to be better than you. The courtroom was silent. Claudia was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, child endangerment, and conspiracy. Travis got 20 years. Claudia got 15. The money Robert had saved, the trust fund he'd set up, all of it went to Violet. Kenneth used part of it to buy a house with ramps and accessible features, a place where Violet could grow up feeling safe and independent. Isaac continued to be part of her life, a constant reminder that sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when the world falls apart. Violet Williams is 16 years old now. She's an honor student, a talented artist, and an advocate for children with disabilities. She speaks at schools and conferences telling her story, reminding people that cruelty exists but so does kindness. She tells them that her father's love didn't end when his heart stopped beating, that it lived on in the choices he made, the protections he put in place, and the people he trusted to carry his legacy forward. She tells them that even when you feel abandoned, even when the people who should love you turn their backs, there is always hope. There is always someone willing to fight for you. What would you have done if you were Isaac that night? And if you were Violet, could you have found the strength to forgive? This story moved you? Do us a favor. Hit that like button. Leave a comment telling us what you felt, what you learned, what you do differently. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that there's still good in this world. And subscribe to our channel because we're not done telling stories that matter. Always remember that love protects. Truth wins. And no matter how dark the night gets, morning always comes.